I watched the months leading up to the election when the president continued to tell the American people that the election was going to be stolen. And then we got to Election Day, and frankly, it was closer than most anybody thought. But the president then went on to say the election was being stolen, and but never put any evidence out there. And it went on for months. And frankly, I think the president abused the loyalty and trust of the people who voted for him by spewing that nonsense without ever putting any facts out there.
That was former House Speaker John Boehner blasting, really going after Donald Trump's push to overturn the election results. A campaign that, as Boehner notes, began way before Election Day, like months before the election, with Trump telling all of his supporters without any basis in fact that the election would be stolen from him if he lost. But despite that shameless and baseless attempt to undermine our democracy, guess who Boehner voted for? Donald Trump. He told Time magazine, quote, "I thought that his policies, by and large, mirrored the policies that I believed in. I thought the choices for the Supreme Court were top-notch." Another Trump critic who can't seem to quit, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, who now says she'll stand down on a presidential bid and support Trump if he runs in 2024. Here's what she told Politico back in February in the wake of the Capitol insurrection, quote, "We need to acknowledge he let us down. He went down a path he shouldn't have, and we shouldn't have followed him. And we shouldn't have listened to him, and we can't ever let that happen again." Joining our conversation, former RNC chairman and MSNBC contributor Michael Steele. Nick Confessori's here, New York Times political and investigative reporter and MSNBC political analyst. I used to watch Dexter, Michael Steele, and it was like he'd be such a good boyfriend if he wasn't a killer. I mean, this is the sickness of the Republican Party. The sickness actually isn't anyone with the last name Trump. The sickness is John Boehner, who's like, well, yeah, I liked his positions on regulation, so I voted for an insurrectionist, liar, corrupt guy who was suspiciously cozy with Vladimir Putin. The Republican Party cannot be fixed with people like John Boehner voting for Donald Trump in 2020.
Yeah, that's the reality and the truth of it. How do you say, I like the policy, but, the character of the man, the quality of his leadership, how he's helped us or not helped us through these tough times with COVID, that's secondary to the policy. And John Boehner went on to say, well, I voted for the party and not the man. Well, the party is the man. He made that very clear. Nikki Haley, same thing. I mean, you can't sit there and say he let us down, but if he runs again, I'll just stand down. Well, okay, so what does that say about your leadership? And that's the new frontier for a lot of these Republicans is how do you express your leadership in the face of Donald Trump? Is it still putting forward the face of Trump, or do you put forth your own and ask the party and the country to trust your judgment as opposed to trusting your judgment in Trump?
How does the party lay any claim to the mantle of strong leadership when they're so pathetically weak? They're hostages to the guy who incited an insurrection, in the words of Liz Cheney.
Well, they're not only hostages to the guy who incited the riot, they're hostile to the folks who are standing up and saying, dude, that's not what you want to do. That's not where you want to go. You don't want to follow him. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. You don't want to do that. So they shut down that narrative as quickly as they can because they don't want to confront that truth about themselves, Nicole, that they have capitulated, that they have given in. It's one thing to rail against Trump after the fact. We still remember what you said at the moment. We still remember what you did in the moment. We understand what you said and did in the face of January 6th. It's like McConnell, giving that great speech after he voted to acquit the guy. Well, you don't acquit the guy and then go, yeah he actually did it.
Yeah. I mean, and Nick Confessori, it's also, I think, a warning shot to all of us in the media who cover Republicans willing to say one, critical thing of he who incited an insurrection and his supporters to, quote, hang Mike Pence. Boehner's on a publicity tour to sell a book. He said some critical things about Jim Jordan and Ted Cruz, but pretty revealing in that Morning Joe interview that he actually, Time Magazine reported, that he did indeed vote for Donald Trump. And that was after months and months of perpetuating a big lie that if he were to lose, it would be because there was fraud or because Joe Biden cheated.
Look, I think Speaker Boehner is being painfully honest here. He's saying, I'm not a huge fan of insurrection, but I love his Supreme Court picks. And that's essentially the deal that most Republicans have made with former President Trump, that they got what they wanted out of him, what they needed. They got control of the federal courts for a generation. They got some deregulation. They got a huge corporate tax cut. And I think in their minds, it was worth it. And as you point out, it was clear on Election Day when Speaker Boehner cast his ballot what was happening with President Trump. He had spent months sowing destabilizing lies and conspiracy theories about the election. He judged it was worth it. We should have more of this man in the White House. That's the deal. And I think, look, President Trump is holding his party hostage, basically. And they can't win with him, and they can't win without him. He's their best fundraiser. He's their most revered elder statesman. He is raising a huge amount of money into his PAC, and he wants a role in picking their Senate candidates. And he's going to be the kingmaker as long as they allow him to be.
Michael Steele, I never like turning this back onto Democrats because they are the only party interested in governing from a place of principle and public service. President Biden is trying to cure COVID for everybody. He's not asking party registration before he jabs anybody. But is there something about the transactional nature of Republicans that they could sort of jiu-jitsu and use to their own advantages? I mean, is there something to be taken of just how shallow and transactional GOP support is in the modern age?
Well, no, I think that's a very good point. And a lot of that is baked into the calculation that Nick just laid out in terms of how the party looks at this. And they figure, look, here's the bottom line. What are the consequences? What are the consequences? All right, so yeah, we lost the presidency, but what did we hear after they lost the presidency? Well, it was Donald Trump. It wasn't us, right? They voted against Trump and not against us because we picked up seats in the House. We kept the Senate close, and yeah, we lost it, but we really do still have some control. And their thinking going into next cycle is we'll get them both back. And it is based on that calculation, how the voters receive this and perceive it. At the end of the day, they still believe that there are more people who are going to align themselves with what they're saying in the Trump orbit than what they see in the Biden orbit, which is why they continue with the socialism narrative, which is why they continue with, well, we're not going to cooperate and work with him because they don't want to see that ground. And this is the sticking point that I think becomes more difficult in the next cycle. Biden has established success on COVID. He's lining up the narrative on infrastructure, and voters are liking that. They like what they hear. So then how do you reconcile that if people have their shots, the economy's back open, and guess what? My construction company is now back doing, shovel-ready jobs to help rebuild the economy. Oh, and the Republicans' message is, well, that's socialism, vote for us. I think that becomes a hard thing to sell, but that's the calculation right now.
Yeah, I mean, but Nick, to turn it back onto the shallowness of the Republican argument, I mean, a shot in the arm and your business being back open with people in your restaurant eating indoors and outdoors as a result of a vaccinated population. Socialism is abstract. It's an attack line that people can't attach much to. But if you own a restaurant, your restaurant being open, if you own a daycare being full of kids whose parents are back going to offices and community work, I mean, there are tangible sort of real results in people's lives, regardless of their party affiliation. I mean, the Biden administration couldn't target their policies for the people that voted for him if they wanted to. So it makes the way the former president governed seem ludicrous, where he didn't want to do anything for anyone who didn't vote for him.
I mean, it's amazing when you think about it. If President Trump had done an actual infrastructure bill like he said he was going to do over and over again, I think he might still be president. He had these moments. And what you see with President Biden is his first two big things out of the box are pretty straightforward. They have some things Republicans don't like in the Congress, but they're broadly supported by the public. He's not doing, edgy things so far, right? It's COVID response and infrastructure, however you define